You know that feeling, right? You try to make your own perfume at home, maybe with some essential oils. You carefully mix a few drops here, a few there, full of hope. And what do you get? Something that smells, well, honestly, a lot more like some kind of herbal medicine than that amazing fragrance you bought. It's genuinely frustrating sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. It's a really common thing, and it kind of highlights that perfumery isn't just, mixing nice smells together. It's a real art form, a deep craft. Think about it like picking up a guitar or maybe a paintbrush for the first time. You wouldn't expect to compose a symphony or paint a masterpiece right away, which takes practice, sure. But maybe more importantly, it takes understanding the fundamentals first.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do today. This deep dive is meant to be a shortcut, really, to understanding the core of creating beautiful scents. Now, becoming a professional perfumer, that's obviously a huge challenge, but our sources are pretty clear. Just like learning an instrument, with the right knowledge, the right approach, and practice, anyone can teach themselves to make genuinely great perfumes at home. It's about, demystifying this seemingly complex world, breaking it down into steps you can actually learn.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Where do we start? The bedrock, right? The essential tools for someone just starting out. Like any craft, you need the right gear. What are the absolute must-haves?
Right. First thing, absolutely first, you need scales. And accuracy here is, it's non-negotiable. Ideally, you really want scales that measure down to 0.001 grams, 0.001.
Wow, that precise. Yeah, that level lets you measure tiny amounts, gives you much more control, and importantly, it helps your expensive ingredients go a lot further. Now, if that's a bit much to start, a 0.01 gram scale is okay for beginners. But here's the really critical bit our sources stress. Never try to measure using drops. Just don't.
Right.
It will cause endless problems and inconsistencies down the line, trust me.
Okay, so no more drops. Precision saves money and headaches.
Yeah.
Got it. What else is essential?
You'll definitely need lots of small sample bottle vials, really. That's where you'll make your trials, your experiments. It saves wasting your good stuff on big batches before you're ready.
Makes sense.
And disposable plastic pipettes, loads of them. Our sources suggest getting big boxes, like 500. You go through them really fast, especially avoiding contamination.
Okay, pipettes in bulk.
And paper blotters, yeah. Scent strips, you absolutely need those for smelling things properly, for evaluating your work.
Right, the strips. And I guess with all these little bottles and experiments, keeping track is vital.
Oh, absolutely spot on. A pen and loads of labels, non-negotiable. You have to know what's what. Clear identification is everything. You might see things like glass beakers mentioned, but they're more optional, maybe for later if you scale up. Not essential right at the start.
Okay, basic gear sorted. Scales, vials, pipettes, blotters, labels. Now, the actual ingredients, the scent palette. What do professionals call these ingredients?
They call them raw materials, that's the professional term, and generally you can think of them falling into three main classes: naturals, synthetics, often called aroma chemicals, and then bases, which we can talk more about later.
Okay, let's start with naturals. What falls under that umbrella?
So naturals come directly from plants, mostly. The most common ones you'll know are essential oils. Those are usually extracted using steam distillation, think lavender oil, bergamot oil, that sort of thing.
Right.
Then you have absolutes. These are made differently, using solvents to extract the aromatic compounds. They often smell, well, closer to the actual living plant and tend to last longer on the skin. Jasmine absolute is a classic example.
Closer to the real thing. Interesting.
Yeah, and there are others too, like resinoids, CO2 extracts. Each has its own quirks and uses.
Okay, and then the second category, synthetics or aroma chemicals. You said they're quite different.
Very different. Synthetics are single, individual molecules created in a lab. That's the key distinction. Naturals, even a simple essential oil, are actually complex mixtures of sometimes hundreds of different molecules. Synthetics are just one.
And why is that important?
Well, it means synthetics offer incredible precision and consistency. They are absolutely vital to modern perfumery. Honestly, most of the great contemporary perfumes you smell, they rely heavily on synthetics for their structure, their clarity, their unique effects. They give you clean, distinct smells and let perfumers create things that, well, just aren't found in nature.
It's really interesting because I think a lot of people, myself included sometimes, instinctively think natural equals better or maybe safer.
Right.
What's the key reason synthetics are so critical for getting that, shop-bought perfume smell?
That's a great point, and it hits on a really common misconception. The key reasons are precision, consistency, and possibility. Naturals are beautiful, but they can vary hugely, like wine vintages, depending on the harvest, the weather, the soil.
Okay.
Synthetics, they're consistent every time. bang on. Plus, they allow perfumers to isolate specific facets of a smell or create entirely new abstract concepts. Think about like a crisp, clean laundry smell, or a sharp ozonic sea breeze, or just a pure, abstract white musk. Those often rely heavily on synthetics.
The smells that aren't really from a specific flower or wood.
Exactly. And that idea about safety, that naturals are always safer or better for the environment, it's just not true. Some naturals can be irritating or allergenic or require huge amounts of land and water. Some synthetics are incredibly safe and biodegradable. Safety has to be looked at ingredient by ingredient, whether it's natural or synthetic. There's no blanket rule.
So we need to be careful with both then. What's an example of a natural people might think is totally safe but needs handling care?
Oh, a classic example is something like bergamot essential oil or even lemon oil. They smell wonderfully fresh, right? But certain components in them are phototoxic,
Meaning?
meaning if you put them on your skin in too high a concentration and then go out in the sun, you can get nasty burns or sensitization.
Wow, okay. Good to know. Natural doesn't mean harmless.
Exactly. It's a plant defense mechanism sometimes.
Got it. Okay, so naturals, synthetics, and you mentioned bases briefly.
Yeah, bases are like pre-made accords. They're reproducible formulas that act like a single ingredient. Think of them as complex building blocks. We'll probably touch on those more when we talk about composition.
Okay. And solvents. We don't just mix these concentrated materials straight, do we?
No, definitely not. You need a solvent to turn your fragrance concentrate into something wearable, like a spray perfume. For beginners, the main thing you need is cosmetics-grade ethanol. Perfumer's alcohol, basically.
Right. Ethanol. Okay, this is fascinating, but also a lot. For someone starting out, where do you even begin choosing materials? What are a few key raw materials that give you a taste of that professional smell relatively quickly?
Good question. Yeah, it can seem overwhelming. Our sources suggest a really useful starting palette.
Yeah.
For longevity and that diffusive quality, making the perfume noticeable, things like iso-e-super, hedione, and ambroxan are fantastic.
Hedione, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, hedione is amazing. It's got this light, radiant sort of jasmine, citrus, floral character, but it also does this incredible thing where it makes other ingredients bloom and project as airiness. It's in so many modern scents.
Cool. Okay, what else?
For a versatile citrus, bergamot essential oil. It's used everywhere, bridges top and mid notes beautifully. Then maybe a musk for longevity and softness, like ethylene brassylate. It gives that nice lingering skin scent.
That's a musk, right?
Patchouli. It's an aromatic herb related to mint, actually, but it's a deep, earthy base note, foundational in many classic structures like chypres and orientals.
Patchouli. Okay. Less scary than I thought, maybe.
It can be beautiful when used well. Then something sweet. Vanillin is the obvious one. Instantly recognizable vanilla smell. Very useful.
Vanillin. Yeah.
And maybe dihydromyrcenol. It's very fresh, citrusy, slightly floral, maybe a bit metallic. It screams men's fresh aftershave to many people, but it's incredibly useful for adding lift.
That's a great starting list. Iso, e-soup, hedione, ambroxan, bergamot, ethylene brassylate, patchouli, vanillin, dihydromyrcenol. But where do you actually buy this stuff? Not your average health food store, I'm guessing.
No, definitely not. And that's a real challenge, actually. Finding good quality synthetics can be tricky for hobbyists. And critically, most essential oils you find easily online, like on Amazon or in wellness shops, they're just not the right quality for fine fragrance.
Why not?
They often have impurities or off notes because they're produced for aromatherapy or food flavoring, not for the specific odor profile needed in perfume. Using cheap, low-quality naturals is a surefire way to make your perfume smell muddy or just wrong.
Okay, avoid cheap oils. What else?
And definitely avoid things sold as fragrance oils. Those are typically pre-made blends designed for candles, soaps, air fresheners. They aren't the individual raw materials you need for proper perfumery.
Got it. Fragrance oils are out, so where should people look?
You need to buy from suppliers, specifically selling raw materials for perfumery. In the U.S., places like Perfumer's Apprentice, Perfumer Supply House, CreatingPerfume.com are very reputable.
Okay.
In the U.K., you've got Pellwall, Harris & Joseph. Good options there.
Right.
For the EU, check out De Hexery in the Netherlands, PCW in France, Perfumiers in Poland. And if you're in East Asia or need international shipping, Perfumer's World is a well-known supplier based in Thailand.
That's super helpful. A solid list of places to start looking. Okay, so we've got tools, a starting palette, places to buy them. Now let's talk about the language, the terminology. What are some key terms we absolutely need to know?
Right. Let's get the basics down. First, perfume concentrations. You see these on bottles all the time. EDT and EDP. Eau de toilette EDT is less concentrated, typically maybe around 10% fragrance concentrate mixed with 90% alcohol, usually a bit cheaper, maybe lighter.
Okay, 10% for EDT.
And eau de parfum EDP is more concentrated, often around 20% fragrance concentrate to 80% alcohol. Though these percentages aren't strict rules, they can vary.
Got it. EDT is stronger, usually. And what about the notes? Top, middle, base. That's the olfactory pyramid thing, right?
Exactly. The olfactory pyramid is just a way to describe how a fragrance changes over time after you spray it. Top notes are what you smell first. They're usually bright, volatile, make the first impression, but they don't last long, maybe minutes to an hour.
The initial hit.
Yeah. Then, as they fade, the mid-notes or middle notes emerge. These are often called the heart of the perfume. They give it its main character. Florals often sit here. They last longer, maybe a few hours.
The main theme.
Right. And finally, the base notes. These are the heaviest, longest-lasting molecules. They provide depth, fixation, the final impression that lingers on your skin for many hours, sometimes even days on clothes. Woods, musks, resins are often base notes.
Okay, top, mid, base. Makes sense, like a scent journey.
Precisely. You'll hear people talk about perfumes in those terms all the time.
Now, speaking of building scents, what's the difference between an accord and a base? They sound kind of similar, like mixtures.
They are related, but there's a key distinction. An accord is like a musical chord. It's a blend of two or more ingredients that creates a new, unified smell, something that smells like more than just the sum of its parts. It's about the synergy, the harmony, creating a specific effect.
Give me an example.
A classic one is an amber accord. You might blend Labdanum Absolute, which is deep and resinous, with vanillin, which is sweet. Together, they don't just smell like Labdanum plus vanillin. They create this third thing. A warm, rich, sweet, slightly powdery amber smell. That's the accord.
Ah, okay. It's the combined effect. So what's a base then?
A base takes that idea a step further. A base is an accord, or a more complex blend, that you've standardized into a reproducible formula. You've worked out the exact proportions, you can make it consistently, and then you can use that entire base as if it were a single raw material in other perfume formulas.
Like a pre-made component.
Exactly. Think of it like a complex Lego brick that you've built and can now snap into different constructions. An accord is the idea of the harmony. A base is that harmony turned into a stable, usable building block.
Okay, that clarifies it. Accord is the harmony, base is the finished block. Makes sense. So we've got supplies, ingredients, language. Now the big one, actually making stuff. The journey to creating your own formulas. Our sources talk about this like learning music scales before symphonies, right? A structured approach.
That's a perfect analogy. Yes, you could just grab a formula online and weigh it out, but if you want to create your own unique scents reliably, you need to build foundational skills.
There's a really useful three-stage learning model that comes up often. Stage 1 is learning your raw materials inside out. Stage 2 is learning to create those accords and bases we just talked about. And Stage 3 is learning to compose complete perfumes.
3 stages.
Yeah, and crucially, it's not like you finish one and forget it. Even when you're composing full perfumes, you're constantly drawing on and even practicing skills from stages 1 and 2. It's all interconnected.
Right. Okay. Let's dive into stage 1, learning your raw materials. What's the big pitfall here for beginners?
The biggest mistake, honestly, is just opening the bottle and sniffing the neat material.
Why is that bad? Seems intuitive.
Because many raw materials are incredibly strong. Smelling them neat gives you a distorted impression, and worse, it leads very quickly to olfactory fatigue. Your nose just gets overwhelmed and temporarily shuts down. You can't smell accurately after that for a while. Ah, okay, so how do you smell them properly?
Dilution. You absolutely must dilute your raw materials before evaluating them. The standard recommendation is to dilute everything to 10% in perfumer's alcohol. Some people use 20%, but 10% is very common. The key is to pick a percentage and stick to it consistently for all your materials so you're comparing like with like.
Okay, dilute everything to 10%. Then what?
Then you do systematic evaluation. Get your scent strip, label it clearly like Hedione 10%, dip the very end into the dilution, quick tip. Fold the other end of the strip up so when you put it down, the dipped end doesn't touch your table and cross-contaminate later.
Smart.
Wait maybe 10-15 seconds for the alcohol to flash off, then bring the strip towards your nose, maybe a centimeter away. Don't touch your nose with it. And smell. Really pay attention. What does it smell like? What does it remind you of? Write down everything, any descriptors, any images, any feelings.
Be really descriptive.
Yes. And then leave the strips somewhere safe, like pinned to a board or in a holder. Come back and smell it again after an hour, after a few hours, the next day, maybe a few days later. Keep smelling it and taking notes until you can't smell it anymore.
And doing that helps you figure out if it's a top, mid, or base note.
Exactly. That process tells you its longevity, its evaporation curve. It's how you truly learn its character over time. Rough rule of thumb. If it's gone in under a day, it's probably acting as a top note. If it lasts up to a week, maybe a mid note. Longer than a week, definitely a base note characteristic.
Wow, okay. That's proper nose training.
It is. And it's vital information for when you start composing. You need to know how long things will stick around. Oh, and one more thing for stage one. For really potent materials, things like aldehydes or some animalics, you might even need a secondary dilution, down to 1% or even 0.1%.
Why is that?
Because some materials smell completely different. Sometimes even unpleasant or just weird when they're too concentrated. Diluting them reveals their true character. Look, I know this stage sounds tedious. Diluting, labeling, sniffing strips day after day. It can feel like homework.
Yeah, a bit.
But honestly, this is the foundation. Skipping this is like a musician not practicing scales. You won't build the intuitive understanding you need later on. It's so important.
Okay, message received. Diligent nose training is stage one. What happens in stage two? Learning accords and bases.
Right. Once you feel you've got a decent handle on maybe, say, 20, 30 individual materials, you can start combining them into simple accords. Let's go back to that amber accord, labdanum and vanillin. Before you even mix them, you can take your 10% dilution strip of labdanum and your 10% strip of vanillin.
And just hold them together?
Yeah, hold them together near your nose. It gives you an instant, rough idea of whether they harmonize well, what the combined effect might be like. It's a quick check.
Cool trick. And then making a trial blend.
So you decide on a starting ratio, maybe 50-50 just to begin. You get a clean sample vial. You carefully weigh in, say, 0.500 grams of your 10% labdanum dilution. Then, and this is crucial use, a completely separate clean pipette to weigh in 0.500 grams of your 10% vanillin dilution into the same vial.
Separate pipettes avoid contamination.
Always. Then label it clearly.
Yeah.
Amber Accord trial, 1 50-50 lab bin. Swirl it gently. And now, critically, step away for a minute, get some fresh air, clear your nose from the smells of handling the dilutions.
Reset your nose.
Yes. Then come back and evaluate your trial blend on a fresh scent strip. Does it work? Is the balance right? Too much labdanum, too much vanillin. Then you adjust. Maybe try trial 2 with 60% labdanum, 40% vanillin. Make a new blend. Evaluate again. You keep making these small, iterative adjustments until you hit that sweet spot, the ratio that creates the exact amber effect you like. This methodical iteration is sometimes called the Jean Carles method.
Okay. Testing harmony, careful blending, fresh nose evaluation, iterative refinement. That's stage 2. Which brings us to stage 3, learning to create full perfumes. This sounds like where the real creativity kicks in. Is there a set method here?
Well, this is where it becomes less about following strict rules and more about applying the intuition and knowledge you've built in stages 1 and 2. There isn't one single right way to compose. Your intuition guides you, and that intuition gets better and better with practice. But we can walk through a hypothetical example, maybe. Let's say you want to create a light summery scent, maybe inspired by Italy.
Okay, Italian summer perfume. Let's do it.
You might start with a foundation. Maybe that amber accord we just perfected could be part of the base, giving it warmth.
Right, using our base.
Then you need a heart, a mid-note character. Rose is classic, works beautifully with amber, so let's add some rose, maybe a rose absolute or a rose accord.
Amber base, rose heart. What about the top?
For that Italian summer sparkle, bergamot is perfect. That zesty, bright top note.
Okay, amber, rose, bergamot. That's the structure.
Exactly. Now you start adding embellishments to enhance the theme. Italian summer, light. Maybe something watery or ozonic. Helianol is an aroma chemical that gives a fresh, watery, almost melon-like sea breeze effect. It often pairs nicely with rose.
Sea breeze, nice.
Maybe add a touch of floral for a general, fresh, clean floral lift. And definitely some hedione for that diffusive radiance we talked about, enhancing the citrus and floral note.
Adding layers and effects.
Yeah. And maybe you look at the base again. Is the amber accord too heavy on its own? Maybe you reduce its percentage slightly and scaffold the base with softer things, like that ethylene brassylate musk for longevity and a soft skin feel, and isoe super for a smooth, abstract, woody, ambery background structure. It makes the base less dense, more transparent.
So you're fine-tuning the balance.
Right. And maybe a final subtle touch, a tiny bit of ambroxan to boost the amber and add a hint of marine saltiness, a trace of alpha isomethyl ionone for a soft, powdery, comforting veil.
Wow. Okay, so you build the core, then add complexity and nuance.
Pretty much. You sketch out your formula on paper with percentages for everything, making sure it adds up to 100%. Then you go to your scales and carefully weigh out each ingredient into a sample vial. Maybe make a 5-gram or 10-gram trial batch depending on your scale's precision.
And then evaluate on a strip, just like the Accords.
Yes. But here's that crucial evaluation best practice again, especially for full perfumes.
The big don't.
The big don't is do not start weighing ingredients, take a sniff, think, needs more bergamot, add a bit more, sniff again, think maybe some hedione, add that.
Why not? Seems efficient.
It seems efficient, but it completely destroys your objectivity. You get instant olfactory fatigue, you bias your nose towards the last thing you added, and you lose track of what the actual formula is. You end up chasing your tail.
Okay. Chaos.
Total chaos. The right way is design your formula on paper first. Then make that exact formula. Then step away, clear your nose, and evaluate it objectively on a strip over time. If you decide it needs more bergamot or less amber or whatever, you don't tweak the existing vial. You formulate a completely new trial 2 with that specific change incorporated.
Make a whole new blend for each change.
Yes. That way you can compare trial 1 and trial 2 side by side on strips and know exactly what effect that single change had. It seems slower, but it saves massive confusion and maximizes your learning, especially early on. Make one change per iteration, ideally.
That makes so much sense. Methodical comparison beats chaotic tweaking.
Got it. Now, before anyone gets too excited and starts mixing, we absolutely have to talk about safety. This isn't just mixing nice-smelling water, is it?
No, definitely not. Safety is paramount. First off, remember, perfumers' alcohol is flammable, and many raw materials themselves are flammable too. So, rule number 1, keep everything well away from open flames, sparks, or high heat sources. No smoking while perfuming.
Flammability. Check. What else? These raw materials are highly concentrated chemicals. Some can be toxic if ingested. Some are skin irritants or sensitizers. Some can cause allergic reactions. And this applies to both naturals and synthetics. Don't fall into that natural is safe trap again.
Right, like the phototoxic bergamot.
Exactly. Remember, many essential oils are literally plant defense chemicals. They're meant to deter insects or fungi. They can be potent.
Good point. Plant defenses.
So absolutely never ingest any raw material unless you know it's food grade and intended for that. And never apply undiluted raw materials directly to your skin unless you have specific knowledge that a particular one is safe neat, which is rare.
Okay, no drinking, no neat application. How do you know safe levels in a perfume?
That's where IFRA comes in, the International Fragrance Association. They research fragrance ingredients and set safety standards for their use in different product types, including perfumes. It's really important to research the IFRA recommendations for any material you use, especially if you ever plan to share or sell your creations. You need to ensure your final perfume is skin safe.
Follow IFRA standards. Got it. Any other general safety tips?
Just good lab practice, really. Keep kitchen roll handy for spills, work in a well-ventilated area. Consider wearing disposable gloves, especially when handling the concentrates, to avoid skin contact. And maybe even safety goggles wouldn't be a bad idea, just in case of splashes. Better safe than sorry.
Absolutely. Gloves, ventilation, maybe goggles. Treat it with respect. Okay, that's crucial advice. Now, for listeners who are really getting into this and want to keep learning, keep exploring, any recommended reading? Books you'd suggest?
Definitely. My number 1 recommendation for any beginner, the book I always suggest first, is Perfume, The Alchemy of Scent by Jean-Claude Elena.
Elena, the famous perfumer for Hermes, right?
That's him. It's a fantastic book. It's concise, really accessible, not too expensive. He explains concepts clearly, lists key raw materials, and even gives some great examples of simple accord combinations. Just a perfect starting point.
Perfume, The Alchemy of Scent. Okay, what about for someone who's getting really serious, maybe thinking beyond a hobby?
Okay, if you're ready for a deeper, more technical dive, my personal favorite textbook is Perfumery, Practice and Principles by Calkin and Jelinek. Now, fair warning, it is quite expensive. It's a proper textbook. But if you're really committed, the depth of information is incredible. It covers chemistry, material evaluation, composition techniques, pretty much all 3 stages we discussed in detail. It's fantastic.
Perfumery, Practice and Principles. Pricey, but worth it for the serious learner.
Exactly.
Any other suggestions? Maybe something different.
Yeah, a few others come to mind. If you have a strong chemistry background, Scent and Chemistry by Olaf Pickenhagen in Craft is amazing, but it's very technical. Deep chemistry.
Okay, one for the chemist.
Jean-Claude Elena also has another book called Diary of a Nose or The Diary of a Nose. It's less of a how-to manual and more of a diary. It's captivating, gives insight into his creative process, his thoughts on materials. Still has some nice accord ideas scattered throughout. More poetic, maybe. Then, for really exhaustive descriptions of individual raw materials, the classic reference works are by Stefan Arctander, Perfume and Flavor Materials of Natural Origin, and Perfume and Flavor Chemicals, Aroma Chemicals. They're quite old now, from the 1960s, but the detailed smell descriptions, the monographs, are still incredibly valuable for learning materials in depth. They're like the encyclopedias.
Art candor for the deep dives on material.
And one more, maybe. Introduction to Perfumery by Tony Curtis and David Williams. It's another professional-level textbook, good coverage, includes some formulas for classic bases, and has a bit more focus on the industry and business side, too.
Oh, that's a fantastic list, covering different levels and angles. Plenty to explore there. So we've covered a huge amount today. It's clear that perfumery, like any real art or craft, definitely takes time, it takes dedication, quite a bit of practice. But hopefully you can see that the results, creating something uniquely yours, something truly beautiful that you can wear or share, must be incredibly rewarding.
Absolutely. And hopefully, after this deep dive, you have a much clearer, much more actionable idea of what's actually involved. From the essential tools, understanding naturals versus synthetics, finding good materials, learning the language, and crucially, those 3 stages of learning the materials, the accords, the composition, plus the safety.
You definitely have a roadmap now, a way to approach it systematically rather than just randomly mixing oils.
Yeah, a much better starting point for making perfumes that actually smell, sophisticated and intentional.
And maybe, just maybe, as you start to really understand this language of scent, these building blocks, perhaps it'll change how you experience the smells all around you every single day, from the mundane to the magnificent. It opens up a whole new sensory world, doesn't it? What will your first intentional creation smell like?